Section 16 of Shadowland, September 1919. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Read by Donald Warren. Shadowland, September 1919. By Various. Section 16. Where the New Stage Playwrights Come From, by Arthur Edwin Krows. Some 16 new playwrights reached Broadway with full-length plays during the theatrical season just ended. They call for special attention because among their number may be at least part of the hope of a bright future in American drama. Some 16 is by no means a poor showing for newcomers. There is a hesitancy in stating the number exactly, for records of a busy year cannot be as precise as an earnest chronicler might wish, just as there would be difficulty in defining the length of the season itself. Such questions are as debatable as those propounded by the formula of Alice in Wonderland, which is whether, or how long is when. But whoever these newcomers may be, each calls for a careful scrutiny to see if he, or she, for this age boasts the feminist movement, bears the mark of the muse on his forehead. To realize the importance of this, it is necessary to review the circumstances making it likely that the United States of America is soon to give its drama a place in the sun, for circumstances are what appear to cause a playwright to be born at all, rather than special endowment on his part. Without the age, the man seems useless, but when we have the age, it seems inevitable that the man will somehow appear to take advantage of it. There has been no great period of national prosperity that has failed to produce its corresponding advance of arts and letters. Concerning modern drama in particular, we have had Shakespeare in the Elizabethan period in England, the period of Calderon in Spain when Castile was in full flower, Molière in the heyday of the French court, and Ibsen in the train of a great aesthetic movement in Europe and the Scandinavian countries. The great material prosperity of this country, with its unprecedented opportunities for education and better living, has evolved a pronounced public dramatic consciousness, attested by overwhelming popularity of motion pictures, increased amateur dramatic production, mushroom-like growth of little theaters, and unequal circulation of printed plays. All for newer and better plays have been proportionately great. Established dramatists, unable to meet this insatiable demand upon their best efforts, have found the ranks thinning through age and mediocrity of forced production, and these ranks must be filled by the new generation. So far, in this passing time of adjustment to changed conditions, the really great native playwright has not arrived. The great American play has been fondly prophesied for a decade or two, probably remains unwritten. Universal aesthetic attention became focused on American artistic development because Europe staggered under the ravages of a world war, and all the while the blossoming period in America awaits the important arrival of the famous unknown. That we have a large, untouched, reserve supply of playwriting talent is indubitable. It was Ellen Dale's cook who, by calling her master's attention to the fact that she had begun to write the aforesaid great American drama, definitely separated playwriting as a distinct department of American indoor sports. Then it was that critics really noticed that in this land of the free, undisciplined writers, and home of the brave, suffering audience, every bucolic barber and condescending cabman was dashing off a second act. For a while the epidemic received purgative treatment at the hands of reviewers and paragraphers, and then a serious critic here and there made bold to champion the national itch as something bound to enrich professional blood. This healthier regard, dating from the late 90s of the century past, actually has brought a large number of new American playwrights to the fore, and it is a matter for congratulation that the average number produced in each succeeding season in the past has not waned in this. Taking the names of the newcomers alphabetically, so there may be no cries of favoritism, the roster reads: Gustav Bloom, Hilliard Booth, Martin Brown, Wilson Conlison, Harry L. Court, Abijah Dudley, John Tainterfoot, W.D. Heppenstall, John L. Hobble, Whitford Kane, Anthony Paul Kelly, John Lerrick, Leighton Graves Osmond, George E. Stoddard, Rita Wellman, and Percival Wilde. Bloom collaborated with Lerrick in writing the Schubert production of Sleepless Night. Booth wrote Diana of the Follies for Woods, Brown, A Very Good Young Man, for Hopkins. Collison prepared Up in Mabel's Room for Woods. Court joined Stoddard in making the book and lyrics of Bliss and Lester for John Court. Dudley wrote the book and lyrics of Come Along. Foote contributed Toby's Bow to John Williams. Heppenstall and Kane wrote Dark Rosaline for Belasco. Hobble wrote Daddies for the same producer. Kelly involved Three Faces East for Cohen and Harris. For Arthur Hopkins, Osmond wrote The Fortune Teller to the same manager. Miss Wellman submitted The Gentle Wife, and Wilde collaborated with Samuel Shipman on William Harris's Dark Horses. A couple of these plays were Atlantic City tryouts, but theaters of the boardwalk metropolis have as good a claim to the name of Broadway as any of the side street houses that profess hundreds of nights on the glittering thoroughfare. In no case mentioned may a prophecy concerning a given dramatist's future fairly be based on his play. Playwrights rarely arrive on the work they themselves consider their best. Usually the drama that wins production is so sadly battered by outside hands on the way that the author is too heartsick to appreciate the laurels then awarded by the press agent. The most the would-be prophet may do is to consider the dramatist's origin, training, and possible sincerity. On the other hand, where the desirable qualities of sincerity and good craftsmanship are discernible in maiden productions, there is no valid reason why they may not be found the supposition of an earnest, respectable future. Most older dramatists, not jealous of their younger contemporaries, are disposed to believe that great success of a first production will prove fatal to its author. He has reached the top of the ladder in a single bound, but in face of the fact that the youthful Sheridan, after a 2-year interval, followed by his brilliant comedy The Rivals, with another masterpiece, The School for Scandal, they feel that he cannot preserve the proper frame of mind in which to pay future devotions, because he has not been duly humbled by his art. But they make fall on history, too, for John Home never wrote another Douglas, and to date Elmer Reisenstein has not written another On Trial. Notable in connection with this phase of the matter are the names of John L. Hubble, author of Daddies, and Anthony Paul Kelly, author of Three Faces East. Their plays ranked among the positive hits of the season, yet both men are young men of negligible experience in the so-called speaking theater. Kelly has not about him the same air of mystery sustained by Hubble. He did not come, so to speak, out of the nowhere into the here. Before placing his play with Cohen and Harris, he enjoyed a reputation as one of the best and highest-paid scenario writers in the cinematographic field. His position gave him pertinent training, for in it he was called upon to adapt many stage plays to the screen, and, in dissecting them, became familiar with general features of stage technique. According to his own account, his play was written within 2 months. The day after completion, he read it to Sam Harris, the manager, who in turn passed it on to his partner, George M. Cohen. Less than 48 hours then passed before contracts were signed for the play's production. The entire transaction, as the firm's press representative has observed, probably constituting a record for the case of a play by an unknown. For John Hobble, the production of Daddies was a professional sunrise. He was a Kansas cattleman, but had by no means the untutored mind that the bare statement implies. He had always hoped to write plays, and in furtherance of that intention came to New York about 10 years ago to study dramatic construction firsthand in the theaters of the big town. Throughout the time he wrote plays, and for a like period until this red letter occasion, those plays were returned as unsuited to production. It is the habit of newsmongers to pick for emphasis the more sensational features of a new dramatist's past life. and much harm is done thereby to the large body of would-be playwrights who fondly imagine then that the work is easy. How fine it must sound to them that Tony Kelly began as a rodman in surveying gangs for the Santa Fe and Southern Pacific Railroads, or that Wilson Collinson, author of Up in Mabel's Room, was a drug clerk in Columbus, or that George E. Stoddard, co-author of Listen, Lester, worked in a railroad freight department, not saying that he was a bookkeeper, but rather leaving it to romantic imagination to believe him a baggage smasher. But the facts in the case prove that one and all went through some transitional steps that may be called in this light by no other name than apprenticeship to the writing profession. Very often this apprenticeship lies in newspaper work. The man who is able to write a good newspaper story has fully grasped the salient features of playwriting: unity of story, logical sequence of events, economy and attractiveness of presentation, and of course, power of selecting interesting material. Percival Wilde, co-author of Dark Horses and author of the prologue of The Woman in Room 13, had begun literary work as a book reviewer for the New York Times and Evening Post when in 1912 his first short story was published. W.D. Heppenstall, co-author of Dark Rosaleen, is an Irish newspaperman and a short story writer. Until 5 years ago, he was on the staff of the Belfast Morning Telegraph, and since that time has done work of the same character in America. Bide Dudley, who wrote the book and lyrics of Come Along, conducts a theatrical column on the New York Evening World and is said to have increased that newspaper's circulation some 20,000 copies. He came to New York 8 years ago after working as a humorist on the Kansas City Star, the Denver Post, and other newspapers. John Tainter Foote, author of Toby's Bow, in which George Marion made a triumphant return to the stage, comes from the more dignified literary field, having some celebrity as an author of animal stories, dog tales in particular. Little of a biographical nature is known of him. Martin Brown is another man of mystery, although in his case probably not through any expressed desire on his part. There is a rumor that he is a former newspaperman, but he has not been on hand to verify it. It is natural that some of the newcomers should have arrived via the stage itself as an actor, like Frank Raven, stagehand like Frederick Ballard, press agent like Channing Pollock, director like John Emerson, who was literary executor for Clyde Fitch. Thus, Whitford Kane, co-author of Dark Rosaleen, is an actor of celebrity and was appearing with Francis Starr in Tiger, Tiger, at the same time that his own play was being prepared for production. Gustav Blum, co-author of A Sleepless Night, also grew up from within the theater, having been an actor as well as a director of the East-West Players. Harry L. Court entered the theater from an unusual angle as the son of his own producer, John L. Court. The screen is so closely allied with the theater that it is but reasonable to suppose that in time almost as many stage authors will graduate from its ranks as from the stage itself, becoming a third-grade source of dramatists with the theater and the newspaper. Leighton Graves Osmond, who wrote The Fortune Teller, in which Marjorie Rambeau starred, had considerable experience in filmdom before placing his stage play. Mr. Osmond is the most consistent illustration of the power of faith I have ever met. I visited him last January in his California bungalow at Hollywood, just after he received a telegram announcing acceptance by Arthur Hopkins, and while still in the flush of excitement. He took up playwriting for the regular theater on the advice of an oculist who charted his destiny in the stars. The better to follow out this destiny, he dropped even his breadwinning work to devote himself wholly to the stage. Certainly the prompt outcome repaid him for the chance he took. He now is living in a small Jersey community near New York, working on other plays, one of which has been accepted too. End of section 16.